Welcome to my presentation on the SPD process and the application. Skikdash, Anibanjigig Annamarie Stevens. I am a member of the Thana Otham tribe located in southern Arizona. I am the Career Readiness and Employment Program Administrator for American Indian College Fund. I've been with American Indian College Fund since January of 2024. And it's been a great experience. I honestly say that. It's been a wonderful experience. I also wanted just to share with you that over the years, a year and a half that I've been here, we have definitely seen an increase of scholars who have applied for the Student Professional Development Grant, and I think it's wonderful. I always tell people one of the perks of working with the American Indian College Fund is that we get to read these amazing applications from various students across the country, learning about what they're studying, what they're interested in, what they want to learn about, also what they're doing in their community. So it's been a good opportunity to share that. So with that being said, the average amount that we've been getting has really increased. So there's a couple of updates. With that being said, we are only going to allow students to get one SPD grant once an academic year. So if you apply, let's say in the fall semester and you get the grant, that's the only SPD grant you'll get until the next academic year. Or if you apply and you're not approved, or you didn't approve for funding, and you can reapply for spring or summer. And if you get awarded in one of those areas, you can definitely if you get awarded in those areas, then you would have to wait till the next academic year, which will begin in the fall. So with that being said, and the only reason why we're doing that is we're trying to make it fair for anyone who's applying for this SPD grant. Like I said, there has been an increase in number of people who have applied, and we want to give the opportunity for more students to get funding. So that's the main reason we're doing it. Also, I wanted to share that there are some misconceptions in regards to when you're applying for the SPD grant. I had a number of people calling, asking me when they're going to get their funding, assuming that because they turned in an application, they were going to get funding. However, that's not how this works. I will go over the rubric and how things are being done later, but what happens is that you submit an application, it gets reviewed by our reviewers, and we select students that we feel that would be beneficial, and we use a sliding scale. Those students will be contacted. I will email them and let them know that they have been approved. Also, I do send an email out to those students who have been denied. Just make sure you're keeping track of that, because those are the questions that come up after we start the awarding process. A lot of people assume that they are going to get the funding, but that's not the case, because it does have to go through a review committee. One of the big things that I wanted to make sure that you are aware of is that this year, we started highlighting scholars and highlighting stories of what they applied for the SPD grant, how they utilized the SPD grant. This year, we're rolling out on Monday, students who have applied in the summer or the spring of last semester. I'll tell you a little bit about what kind of SPD grant they got. For example, Najoni, she got field work. She goes to school at Colorado State University. She's interested in agriculture education. She's Dene. I did have a pleasure of interviewing her, and her video is going to be on our website, sharing about her experience. So I just want you to let you know that, like, if you're having any questions or you kind of want to see or hear about what students did, I highly encourage you to come to our website. Also kind of read the background of what students did, giving you an idea of some of the things that you could be doing. It ranges from a field work to research, um, to service learning, and also an internship. So, for example, the internship this one young lady did, Annamarie, she got her SPD grant and she created a fashion show, and it taught her so much stuff in regards to how to plan and get prepared, also the cultural aspects of it, um, putting on a big production, working on costume or on the fashion for the fashion show. I think that's a wonderful an experience that for a student to gain as far as planning an event. Sorry about that. So this is just an example of what can be done. Um, Moving forward, I do want to let you know that when you are applying for an SPD grant, you get 2,500, and that's for per semester. If you applied for the fall semester and you get approved, you're going to get 2,500. And I am going to open up what you can do as far as how to apply and some information on here. Like I mentioned, the SPD grant opens up on the 22nd, which is our website. It definitely is beneficial for you to read through this and kind of see what the SPD provides. Overall, the SPD is to help you get a sense of um, achievement in something that you are trying to attain as far as skills. This could be soft skills, hard skills, any long-term objectives that you want to attain from this. I would highly encourage you to put that in your application process. I will be going over some of the questions that we do ask. And then also thinking about your future employment. Well, how is this going to help you in your future endeavors with a career? Um, I am the point of contact for the SPD grant, but when you are sending in the application, it does go to our careers our careers email address. So and then we look at that information sent to me. The program requirements is that you do have to be American Indian College Fund scholar in order to receive this funding. You also have to indicate who your staff or faculty advisors in that when you are filling out the application, what organization do they work with. You must also submit a project proposal. And the proposal, I would highly encourage you to think about your passion and what you're passionate about. This is something that came up with the two ladies that I interviewed in regards to their past experience getting the SPD grant. They said it was easy for them because they were passionate about what they were doing, and it made it easy for them to write about. But thinking about that, and then also thinking about timelines. One of the other things I also wanted to bring up is that students often apply and assume they're gonna get the funding, but when we are looking at applications, we also look at timeframes. So for example, we had somebody who was applying for an SPD grant in the spring semester. However, their SPD grant wasn't actually happening until the summertime. So she was unable to be funded for the spring semester, and we encouraged her to apply for the summertime funding, and she was able to get that. However, keeping that in mind when you are filling out the application. So the deadlines, the time frame for the fall semester starts in October. The deadline is October 3rd, and then you have to complete your SPD project by December. If it's going to exceed or go over that time frame, say like your goal is to start it in January, your application will definitely not be something that would not get approved because we want to make sure that we're dealing with a certain time frame. We would encourage you to apply for the spring semester. Also to keep in mind when you are applying, thinking about some of the proposals or future employments that you're looking forward to attaining, highlighting some of that, and also thinking about what skills you're going to gain. you come into doing this SPD grant, maybe you have some skills, but when you at your current internship, research, or service learning project or field work, you are going to gain knowledge that you didn't have already. So thinking about that, like, well, this is what I want to gain from doing this. For example, I shared the story of the woman who did the fashion show. She's never planned an event like this. She learned so much about herself and what it takes to plan something and the skills that she learned from that. So keeping that in mind. And then also I highly encourage you to seek out guidance from your staff or the faculty that's helping you write this so that they can help you kind of write this. If you want to reach out to anyone else, if you have your coach, if you want to check with that, and making sure that you're turning that in a timely manner. So project ideas, I kind of went over some of this stuff in regards to what you could do. The project ideas, like I said, is an internship that you want to get experience. You want to work with someone, maybe you're already doing it and you're not getting paid. That's something that you could do. Or maybe you want to do something and you want to be an intern and you're approaching a business and they still we don't have the funding for that, but it would be nice if we, if you want to come work here, you could actually pay yourself to be an intern. For any of these things, you could pay yourself. One of the big things that we have students do is also create a budget, and that kind of tells us how you're going to spend your funding. So keeping that in mind. Doing some research projects is something that students can do in regards to working with a faculty member, working on a project, gathering data, looking at analytics, and any helping you through technology. The service learning definitely is something that's more community-based. It's hands-on. It gives you that opportunity to learn while you're in the field, and then also same with the field work. So I want to make sure that you understand that there are these 4 areas that you could look into. But there's one thing that's not highlighted on here, and that's something that we do consider, is certifications. So for example, we have students who have applied in the past for certifications. I'm gonna give you 2 examples. We had one student who was getting ready to take her nursing certification. She needed assistance in regards to getting to her nursing certification, needing help with like food and travel and the cost of doing her certification. We were able to provide that for her with the SPD grant. And that was good because she did get certified to become a nurse. Another example I wanted to point out, and I think about this, thinking back about applications that we review, we've had requests from students who want to do multiple certifications at one time. And I want to tell you that that's not ideal. I think it's if you're going to get a certification, it should be maybe 1 or 2 in that time frame. I don't think you need to think about getting 5 or 6 at one time, because realistically you are a student and your goal is to be a scholar first and to make sure you're being successful in school, and adding that additional work of being certified along with school is not ideal. So if you are searching for like maybe certification in Excel or certification in Google, anything like that, I would keep that in mind when you are thinking about the SPD funding. Those things are doable. It's just you have to explain how that's going to be beneficial to you and not overloading yourself with the idea of taking multiple certifications. So going over the application. These are the deadlines for the application. September 22nd is going to be an announcement that's going to be sent out to everyone, letting them know that SPD grant application is available and you can apply for it online. And then the deadline is going to be October 3rd. You have to submit that before 11:45 Mountain Standard Time in order to be considered. We've had students who have applied the next day, or they start applying, or they apply maybe a week later, and we usually close that. So, and to avoid some of that, we're making sure that we try to close those things. And there's also timestamps of when you turn in your application, so we know when students have definitely met the deadline date. Once we have the applications, we begin the reviewing process. So the reviewing process will happen that week after the 3rd. So on October 6th through the 9th, we will be reviewing applications. By the 10th, we will be letting students know if they got awarded or if they haven't gotten, or if they're not going to receive get an award. Like I said, October 6th through the 9th is the reviewing process, and we do have a number of reviewers who overlook students' applications. Once you get funding, and if you are going to be getting the SPD grant, a letter will be going to you. We'll be asking for documentations like an EFT, payment authorization form, any information related to your checking or bank statement, and I will send an encrypted email, and you do have to follow that encrypted email just to make sure that your documents are not being, shared over the internet or anything's going to happen to them. We do not want that information out there. And then we'll start awarding around the 13th, between that time frame. I do want to let you know that American Indian College Fund does 2 payments a month for payments to be processed. So if your documents do not come in on the week that they are doing funding, you're going to have to wait till the next time frame for that to come in. So for example, if you get approved on the 10th and I'm letting you know that I need your documentation, and the deadline for our accounting department is October 14th. And if I do not receive your documentation by then and don't have it in our system, if you send it in anytime after that, they'll get processed 2 weeks later. So keep that in mind when you're applying for the SPD grant. In November, I'll start checking up with you. I'll also start sending you the evaluation forms for yourself and your faculty or the staff member that you are working with. And it's important for you to please turn those in. We do read them. We do pay attention to them. I do not want this, if you're not turning in your documentation, to hinder you from getting funding in the future, because we do keep track if you submitted all your documentation back or we got feedback. And that has happened to someone in the past where, yes, they may have had a great application, but we're looking at to see, are they following through with what needed to get done as far as submitting documentation afterwards to tell us about their experience. By December 5th, you should start thinking about wrapping up everything, making sure that things are being done. And then by December 12th, you should be turning in all these evaluation stuff and any supporting documents you want to send me, photos, because they tell a story. And we want to tell stories, and we want to share this information with our funders, but also with our staff. So keeping that in mind, making sure that you're turning that in. So I do get calls often wondering why the applications did not get approved. They're asking like, how can they improve? What can they do? Like I recommended, please have somebody look at your application, review your application, be passionate about what you're writing about. Think of, and don't put like a few sentences. Also, don't put if you're like a graduate student, don't put your whole dissertation or a whole document inside this application. We want you to tell a story, but we don't want you to bombard us with a lot of information. We want you to tell us why you're applying for this this project and what do you plan on gaining from it. So these are a couple of areas that we are looking at as far as what we look at in an application. We look at if your application is innovative. We also look if you give a really great explanation, and does it Does it have a personal and professional development? That's something that what you're gonna gain from it. Is it clear? Does it tell us how you're gonna grow as a professional? And one of the things that we look at is in all those three areas, we kind of average it out of like, well, they didn't really write a great proposal as far as like what they planning on gaining from this. So we might score somebody in low. But then there's also those people who, may need a little bit finessing, just changing some words. Um, One of the other things is thinking about, like I said, being passionate about what you're doing and telling us the details, like telling us what you plan on getting from that. And I'll go over some of those questions and explaining that to you. I think it comes across when you are passionate, and also it does come across when you are rushing. And so I honestly tell students, please take the time to go through this and fill it out. Think about the process. Think about your what you plan on gaining from this, what you plan on doing with the funding, thinking about time frames, also about what kind of skills you're going to learn. That's something I want to make sure that you're putting on there and how that's going to work for you. And then also just thinking about if you're not being clear, if you're not being clear and giving us the whole picture of what you're going to be doing, that also hinders to the application process. So I want to make sure that students understand that. And when we look at these areas, we have a sliding scale of 1 to 3, and then we figure out, okay, so if somebody's not like under innovation, if they're not doing great, then it will be scored a 1. If they're average, then it'll be a 2. And then for an exception, it'll be a 3. And from that, we look at all those scores in those different areas of innovation, explanation, personal and professional development. And thinking about all those areas, like what are you doing to explain those things? So keep that in mind when you are applying for the SPD grant. I know it's a lot of information, but once you start the process, it's not that bad. So the checklist as far as what needs to be done, which is due October 3rd, is your cover letter, your cover page, and that's included in the application when you are applying. Your project proposal, your work plan, like what you're planning on doing, any timeframes that you're going to put out, project learning outcomes, and then your supporting documents. I did tell you that, like, for example, if you're going to pay yourself to be an intern, tell us how much you're going to pay yourself. If this all going to go to you, do you need supplies? If you're going to purchase anything that has to do with your project, lay that out. Tell us what you're going to do with it. Also, thinking about if you need supplies. For example, we had somebody who did a renovation project and she was paying herself to do this, but also bought a couple of supplies because the homeowner was buying this, but there are equipment that she wanted to purchase. So this is something that to keep in mind. In the past, this is somebody's project, just an example. And then, like I said, the deadline for this is October 3rd at 11:45 Mountain Standard Time. And then as far as reporting, like I did tell you that I will be sending out evaluations to students who did receive funding, making sure that I'll send those out in November and making sure that you start working with your faculty advisor or your staff member you're working with, that they get this information back to me, they're sending it back to me. I highly encourage you to make sure that you send me any, like if you have articles that you're going to be doing, if you're presenting at a conference, if you did a fashion show, send some photos. If you're working in the field, send photos, or tell us about your experience. I had a couple of students who did a PowerPoint and shared that with me. That's wonderful, but they also shared like articles or anything that they were presenting. Sometimes some students are ambitious and they will send videos. I do understand that takes a lot of storage, but you can also send that as a zip drive. So I kindly encourage you to consider that when you are setting this application. So now I'm going to switch over to the questions. And just to give you an idea of some of the questions that we ask as far as what we are looking for. Okay. So the first question we're going to ask you is always, it's going to ask you your name. It's going to ask you where you attend school, what degree program you're in, what tribe you're from, also what kind of project you're focusing on. We do going to have a drop down box for that. It's going to ask you about who your advisor is, the organization. We collect all this data. I have data that we've had for everybody who has applied in the past. Also, please explain your proposed project. What is your ultimate goal and why you're asking for this funding? Any activities that you're going to do, anything that you plan on hosting, or if you're planning on going to a conference, which I meant to bring up earlier. If you're planning on going to a conference and you want to get SPD funding, but it happens before we start awarding, your application will definitely not be considered. So you have to make sure when you're looking for conferences that it falls into that time frame. Because we want to make sure that the time frame fits in there. And looking at your project time frame, thinking about your project time frame, put those details in there and what you're going to do. Thinking about professional skills, what you plan on completing during this project. So for example, like if you're going to be doing field work, where you're going to be doing field work, what kind of field work you're going to be doing, what do you plan on learning while you're out there during the field work? Just telling us an array of information. You don't have to write a lengthy, like a whole page, but we do want some information from there. As far as what competencies are you going to gain from this, thinking about that, explain to us how you will develop these. How are you going to do this? By getting this funding, this is going to help you gain these skills that you didn't have already. And maybe you have and you want to heighten or you want to improve or expand upon them. Tell us that information. How will this project impact your professional and future or plans for the future? This is really important because overall, the SPD grant, sorry about that, is here to give you that opportunity to get that experience of working and having some experience of being in a professional field. And the reason I say this is because I've often heard that students, sometimes when they return home, they get denied for applying for a job because they don't have experience. But think about this, when you're going to apply for a job, this is something that you could put on your application saying, oh, I did this internship. This helped me gain these skills. This is what I did at my job. Yes, I did this for a summer, but this is what I learned. So those are really helpful things to keep in mind when you are applying for that. And then thinking about what you want to learn from this project, going into that, and it says at least 2 bullet points. I recommend putting a little bit more and being more thoughtful when you are answering this and be reflective of how this experience is going to help you grow and learn. And once again, I did tell you that it's going to ask about your faculty or staff administrator who's going to be helping you, what organization they represent, and then putting together a budget. The maximum is 2,500. That's the maximum that you could receive, and putting details in like how you're going to utilize this. Once again, if you do have questions, you can always reach out to myself. My name is Annamarie Stevens. Once again, I am the Career Service Coordinator. Sorry. I am the Career Service and Employment Program Administrator. I constantly say coordinator, but I am not a coordinator. And I'm here to help you. You can also reach out to your coach and also reach out to somebody that works at your institution If you're at a larger university, reaching out to the Native American programs, or even reaching out to the career service individuals on staff. Uh, Good luck. I wish you the best of luck. I'm looking forward to reading all your applications. I honestly read every single application. I'm inspired walking away from this, and I love doing it. And people who are reviewers have definitely said that they gained so much insight about students and what they're doing. So thank you for your time, and good luck with you applying for the SPD grant.